Good evening, everyone. Oh, there. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Thank you all for coming out. I ask if you could kind of mosey towards the seats for a minute. I'd sure appreciate it. We'll get started here in just a second. In the meantime, prepare for my singing. I am kidding. Please don't make me sing. I apologize for my voice. I attended the Cyclone game yesterday, and I wasn't planning on doing any hooting and hollering, but there at the very end, it just kind of happened. So it was much like our game performance. It felt like maybe we didn't plan it very much, but then at the end, it just kind of happened. And it doesn't matter how ugly the win is, it's still a win. So hopefully we can take some inspiration for that in the election this fall and pull out that win. So thank you all for coming. I'd like to start off with just thanking the church for allowing us this space and all of the many hands that made this night happen, for the fabulous food and the setup and the teardown. Thank you so much for that. In the interest of brevity, we do have a whole bunch of elected officials in the room that are either not on the ballot or are running unopposed. And so we'd really just like to acknowledge them, say thank you for your service. We sure hope those that are on the ballot, are able to pull it through against your non-existent opposition. And so tonight we have Representative Russ Wilburn. Senator Herman Kernbach. Auditor Lucy Martin. And Supervisors Lisa Heddens and Linda Merklin. Thank you so much for your time. Also, I've been asked to read a statement from the Story County Democrats. It says, "We recently learned of the passing of Margot McNabb. Margot was the founder chair of the Story County Democrats and credited with turning Story County blue during her time. We extend our condolences to the McNabb family and remember the great contributions of Margot." So, thank you, Margot, for your time. My name is Mike Wolfe. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm sorry. I'm going to come around soon. I'm running for Iowa Senate, District 26, which is Marshall County and most of Story, with the exceptions for the other lovely senators that you'll meet this evening. I'm an Iowan by choice. I moved here, going on 25 years now, just basically my entire adult life. When I first got here, like I said, my entire adult life, I still had some growing up to do. And one of the most influential people that both taught me how to be an adult and what it meant to be Iowan was my father-in-law. And he'd always start off his advice with, "No, I don't want to tell you what to do." And then he'd tell me exactly what I ought to do, unless I was going to be a moron and not listen. And, that really speaks to me. That is deep in my soul what it means to be an Iowan. That's that I want to help you, and I'm not going to tell you what to do. But just that spirit of service is really what it means to me to be an Iowan. And I'm standing here tonight because I feel deeply in my soul that the Republican majority has completely abandoned that version of Iowa. That the Republican majority is, rather than supporting growing families and helping them grow their families with wanted children, they're demanding that every pregnancy gets carried to term, regardless of the health outcomes for that family. They're demanding that of you, not asking. The Republican majority would rather than investing in public schools that helps all of Iowans and helps all of our children's futures, They're demanding that we all pay for the private education of wealthy individuals who do not need our help. Rather than recognizing the opposition of the overwhelming majority of Iowans, the Republican majority is willing to put the land rights of Iowans second place to private profit to benefit a few individuals. I think that it's time we get back to Iowa values. It's time we get back to people who are ready and willing to listen to us when we express our views to our senators. And tonight there is a whole bunch of people that are ready to get up here and help you with that. First up, we're going to have Margaret Liston. Let's give her a hand, please.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Well, my name is Margaret Liston, and I'm running for Iowa Senate District 24. I am one of 7. My parents, sorry. Is that better? Okay. I am one of 7 siblings. I was born in Perry, Iowa. My parents farmed near Rippey and Baird before moving to Beaver, Iowa, where I attended school. My husband and I are a combined family. We have 6 adult children and 10 inspiring grandchildren. I am a retired operating room nurse and currently serving in my 5th term as city councilwoman for the city of Ogden. I have a master's in public administration, and I am a longtime champion of my community. I decided to run for the Iowa Senate because over the past several years, our current legislature has passed laws and regulations that favor special interest groups, not all Iowans. Many of the laws that have been passed are taken almost word for word from ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, including weakening and dissolving unions across Iowa. ALEC is composed of wealthy companies who invest money into passing laws in states, placing the interest of those corporations ahead of the interests of ordinary Americans. Sadly, ALEC has been very effective due to legislative buy-in and the acceptance of campaign funding. I will not take any funds from ALEC, nor will I vote with these special interest groups and their influences in Iowa. Iowans are very capable of making their own healthcare choices. Yes. Iowans are very capable. No. Iowans know that it's wrong for the government to take farmland for the profit of private corporations. And Iowans are totally able to determine for themselves what books they want their children to read. When I was in 5th grade, my school closed and consolidated to Ogden. And I can tell you from experience, when your school closes, your community dies. My opponent fully supports our governor and her plan to defund public schools and close them. My opponent has voted to give millions of our hard-earned tax dollars to private schools. Private schools can and do refuse to serve kids based on academic performance, special physical, mental, or behavioral needs, race, and religion. Private schools are not held accountable to the same standards that our Iowa public schools do. Our education system was 3rd in the country. We've now fallen to 24th. do not support that and will work hard to fully fund public schools and to restore AEA. Since 2012, we have lost over 3,300 family farms. I want family farms to stay in business and for communities to attract young farming families while also adopting farming practices that will help clean up Iowa's water. Because of all these reasons, I'm running for the Iowa Senate. You and all Iowans deserve better. I will respond to your needs, not those of special interest groups running our state. Iowans deserve better, period. I will work for you, and together we can bring back opportunity, accountability, and freedoms back to Iowa. I can't do it alone. I ask you all, and many of you have already helped with postcards, make phone calls, help knock on doors, volunteer at headquarters, and to donate. Donations help we candidates spread our message across our district. So thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Cynthia Paschen. She's running for Senate District 28.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cynthia Paschen. I'm running in a big red district. It's Hamilton, Hancock, Humboldt, Franklin, Wright County, and then a little tiny bit of Story City and Roland. And when I first started running, I went to all these 6 counties, and the Democrats said, you know, there's 2 things that we agree with the Republicans on. One is public schools, and the other is this carbon capture pipeline. We don't want it, they don't want it. And so that's what I've been talking to folks about. And the other thing that they warned me about, they said, you know, you're going to be in a lot of parades. The Republicans have been really rude to us Democrats in the past parades. And you know what? That turned out not to be true. I have not had a single person be rude to me in a parade. I was in the Scandinavian parade, and I overheard this one guy kind of say, Trump, you know, kind of quietly, Trump. And his kids got on him right away. They're like, Dad, stop it. So I'm having good conversations. I'm not seeing the rudeness that I've seen in the past. I have hope. And my husband and I were driving through Wright and Hamilton County yesterday on the county roads. We saw 1 Trump sign the whole day. 1. So let's do this.
Next up, we have Charles Bruner of the Child and Family Policy Center.
Well, thank you very much. And I think a lot of you watched almost all of the Democratic National Convention. And 2 of the things that really stick in my mind from the convention were Tim Walz's son saying, that's my dad, since I am a dad and granddad, and that was great. And then probably even more so, just seeing the picture of Kamala Harris's daughter looking up at the dais. And both of those were such genuine moments of what is the strength in our society, the power of family, and the love and the caring we had. I don't think that there were similar moments in the Republican National Convention, frankly, but I did think that it called for a unity. And I want to speak just a little bit about the implications for us as we go forward around that. I have up there a sign saying grandparents for Harris-Wallz because of their caring agenda and their Care for Kids agenda. Really, that started in the 2020 campaign with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris pressing for an agenda that would provide for a child tax credit, would expand child care and preschool services, that would establish paid family leave, and that would make home and community-based services more available for parents, for loved ones, and the like. And they followed through, and the American Rescue Plan was starting all of those and came just a couple of votes short of enacting it in 2022 with no Republican support. I consider that a transformational agenda for children and families for our country, and one that really does strengthen and support children and families. It's pro-child, it's pro-family, it's pro-parent, and it's also pro-caregiver and pro-economy.
Just a second. I was supposed to announce that we were beginning the half past. Can you tell people that the half past is beginning?
Okay. Yeah. And the agenda is now something that Kamala Harris is committed to going forward, and we're just a few votes short in the House from getting that. If we have a working majority in the House and Senate, we can see that as an enactment. So I would like you to, as the hat pass goes around, to really think about your children and your grandchildren, or your nieces and nephews, or just what is the future in our society as we move forward on that. I think it's a tremendously powerful agenda. I also think it is that agenda that can bring us together, and I think we have to recognize that right now there is another family agenda that exists. Kim Reynolds talks about Republicans being the party that party matters, that family matters, and that she is leading a pro-family revolution. Bob Vanderplaats emphasizes faith, family, and love of country as core values that have to be really promoted by government. And they both have, I think, a sincerity, but they're talking about a narrow group of families, and they're not speaking in ways that really help those families who may be struggling to maintain their way of life and move forward. But they are doing that, and I think that it is really imperative upon us to speak and be active in presenting what is an agenda that is pro-family. And it is pro-family for that Christian, working class, rural family that is struggling to make ends meet. And it's for that gay family which has adopted a special needs child. And it's for that grandmother who's caring for her grandchild so her daughter can go to work and doing whatever she can and trying to get childcare and summer camp for them. It's all of those families. But this agenda really does move toward that. And I think, frankly, that is something that if we speak about and if we share, it is something that resonates in the rural communities that the two prior candidates were talking about in their discussions. And so I just want to urge you all, I think, around three things. One is, really encourage candidates and yourselves to talk about what brings us together around family and what we want. We want families to be able to raise their children according to their faith and their values in a supportive community where people look out for them and they look out for others. The child tax credit, paid family leave, child care and preschool, and home and community-based services, particularly for those sandwich parents, are exactly the types of actions that government can and must take in order to support those families. So we all want that for all of our kids. And I think it's a winning agenda, and I also think that it's one which, if we demonstrate that this is the reason for people to vote, we can gain back some of the ground that we've lost in rural communities and in the state. and really pull people together and then have these enacted so the next generation of parents and grandparents, and most importantly, kids and grandkids will really have that bright future and be secure and supported. So thank you.
Hey guys, I know Paul carries the gun, but I'm supposed to collect the money and he's got more than me. Are we sure there's nobody else out here that wants to throw it away? I want to beat Paul. Any last? Oh, we're only going to beat.
So in the spirit of looking out for one another, it was pointed out to me that I had a vision problem when I was looking out at the crowd, and I missed a couple of our important elected representatives, and that's Ted, our treasurer, and Sheriff Paul Fitzgerald. So let's give them a quick round. Next up, we have Ryan Condon, who's running for House 51.
Hey folks, how the heck are you? Oh, better step back. My name's Ryan Condon. I'm running for House District for 51, which is Nevada and rural Marshall County. It is a sea of red outside here in Ames. Oh, sorry. Better? Yeah. All right. I'm running for House District 51, Nevada and rural Marshall County. It's a sea of red out there. And the first thing I have to ask is, what is a former Republican that's about 40 pounds overweight with a touch of diabetes doing running as a Democrat? Well, the truth hurts. I was sitting having coffee with my wife one morning, late last year, and just admittedly swearing at the TV and complaining. My wife told me she'd had enough. She's like, get off your butt and do something about it or shut up. So I got off my butt, I went to a Democratic meeting, I met Ryan Melton in Nevada, and I expressed to him, why don't Democrats fight? Well, we got Trump that can lie, 2 lies a minute, I think was at his last debate. No one says anything. We don't fight like that. We fight with facts, figures, but we never touch the base of what people want. And that's when I got it. A lot of these Trump people, they're just people that are hurting. That's all it is. For the sea of red that sits outside of Ames, we Democrats only have ourselves to blame. We let them get to that point. In their desperation, they turned to a man that gave easy answers. Problem is, no problem has a 3-word solution. Deport all the Mexicans is not a solution. Build the wall is not a solution. But people follow that. He told them, this is the reason why you're hurting. My opponent does the same thing, except he's less charismatic and he doesn't really give stances on anything at all. We need to speak to these people that went over to Trump. And that's what I've been doing in my district. I have a man, and this is true, in Nevada who owns a service station that has Biden destroyed America, Trump 2024 save America, with a Ryan Condon sign for District 51 right by it. It drives my opponent crazy, and I relish every minute of it. Sometimes I just drive up and down the street just to look at all the signs. In the town he's mayor of, this man won't go to a single voter forum. He told me he just doesn't want to talk to voters. He's counting on the fact that he has an R beside his name to get the votes. I got a surprise for him. He wasn't expecting somebody like me. I've been going right to his wheelhouse, talking to Trump supporters up and down. And I don't know how many of you guys are veterans of the Hillary-Bernie wars of 2016. The Haley-Trump wars are way worse. These people hate each other. And I have spoken to them. They said they will never in their life vote for Brett Barker, my opponent, because he backed Nikki Haley. Almost to a person. You cannot win an election if half your party will not vote for you because you voted with the sane person. So people follow courage. They follow conviction. They follow the willingness to go into places that people typically, like Democrats, don't go into. That's what I've been doing. And I've found a lot of success. A lot of my biggest supporters are Trump supporters. This has been a strange election with strange bedfellows, as Ryan Melton can attest. Same thing is happening with me. So, and I cannot believe that I am doing this. Ronald Reagan had a quote, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children through the bloodstream. It has to be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same." Nobody's asking us to storm a beach. Nobody's asking for us to go fight a war. What we're asking is that you volunteer, that you donate, you talk to your friends, your family. Thank you guys for your time.
Next up, we have my friend Penny.
That's it?
That's it.
All
That's all
right.
you get.
Hello, Ames. Yeah. Who is fired up to have Kamala on the ticket? Yeah. We were going to vote for Biden because it was our duty, but it is our pleasure to support this new ticket. And add Tim Walz, I'm over the moon over here. Okay, if you have not met me, grab a flyer at the back and read about me, because I only got 5 minutes here and I'm going to have to talk fast to say what I want to say. So after a lifetime of public service, I am now looking to serve my friends and neighbors, fellow Iowans in the Iowa legislature. I am tired. I am so tired. How many of you are tired of this legislature? You fed up? Had enough? Yes. Me too. So I'm tired of a legislature that I don't know who they're working for, but it's not me and it's not you. It's special interests, it's large corporations, it's big dollar donors. Like pretty much every Democrat on the ticket, I think, I don't take any money from any of those people. I only take donations from you guys, the people that I would be working for. So anybody, any real person can donate money to me, no corporations. I'm tired of a legislature that keeps passing legislation that I classify as a solution in search of a problem. We did not have problems with library books. If you didn't want your child to read a book, there was a procedure in place. You went to the library and you went to the school and said, I don't want my kid to read that. And they put them on a do not check out list. There was not a problem. They are inventing these culture wars to get people stirred up, so they don't pay attention to the fact that the Iowa Republican Party has their hand in your pocket at all times and giving it off to the wealthiest and the corporations. We could be spending our time taking care of a lack of affordable child care. I knock on too many doors and talk to too many grandmas and grandpas who are providing daycare for their grandchildren. This was not their plan in retirement, I can tell you that. And I talked to one grandmother who had to quit her job to provide daycare for her grandchildren so that her daughter and son-in-law could work. J.D. Vance has no clue what it's like out here in the real world. Let's play a little game of Never Have I Ever. So, in my time, never have I ever heard a woman say that my gynecologist and I have been making my healthcare decisions for a long time. But you know what's missing for those conversations? We need a bunch of legislators, mostly white men, with a limited understanding of the human reproductive system, to come in and tell us what we should be doing, right? Never have I ever heard anyone say, you know, Iowa was founded on a strong education. There was a little one-room schoolhouse every mile. No kid had to walk further than that to school, and all the farm families around supported that school and that teacher in any way that they could. And we had an education that was, if not number one, very close in this nation. I had friends in New Jersey and California that both took the Iowa Basic Skills Test as a student growing up. We were the gold standard. Since Republicans have taken over Iowa, it has been a slide to mediocrity. They've been funding below the rate of inflation, and we all know I've gotten a raise before that was less than inflation, and my paycheck was then smaller than it had been before I got the raise. Plus then, of course, my health insurance went up as well. So it was even more smaller. We need a legislature that puts our students first. We're getting one shot at educating these kids, and we are failing. We are especially failing with the AEA changes, those kids with special needs. I have a friend who's 39 years as a speech therapist in Iowa schools, and she was talking to a school, one of her students was transferring, and telling them what this kid was going to need, and they said, well, we're short 3.5 staff members in our special ed for our school, so we're going to have to be doing telehealth with that job. Can you imagine? The lives of these children can be so elevated by the skills that they can be taught, the special needs child, and they pick them up, of course, when they're young, much, much faster than they do as an adult. This is the time to provide them with that intervention and those services that they need, and we're not able to this year. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Legislature. Oh, and I've never had anybody say, we're spending too much on education. Why don't we take some of that money out of our public schools and give it to private schools? Not to the schools, we'll give it to the parents of private school children so they can put it in an account, and if they don't need it, they just let it build up, and by the time their child is college age, we have paid for their kids' college education. Nobody asked for that. Nobody asked for, I have to say my personal story. I'm a survivor of an ectopic pregnancy, and an emergency surgery in the middle of the night saved my life decades ago, and now young women in Iowa are not going to be having that opportunity. Their doctors will hesitate. In other states it's already happening. They put them in the hospital and wait for it to rupture and try to save their life before they bleed to death. That is happening in this country. We are a third world. Iowa is a third world country as far as our pregnant women, our new mothers, and our infants. We have the highest infant mortality rate in the country. So you think that would be what state would you think? You wouldn't think Iowa, but it's us. We're the only state in the country with a rising cancer rate. The only one. We're number 2, but at our rate, we'll be number 1 very soon. We think that may have something to do with the quality of the water in Iowa. This last Labor Day, I saw 12 lakes, no swimming, no boating. They're too polluted. That's a lot of lakes. And when the governor finds out that water testing shows a lot of pollution in Iowa, she cuts water testing. Because don't look, people, just don't look. So I'm done, I'm tired, I'm fed up, we can do better, I can do better, I can work for you instead of whoever these people are working from. And it's interests outside of Iowa, it's not in. So, as everybody says, we can't do this alone, we need your energy, we need you volunteering. If you've got some money, we'll take it. If you've got some time, we'll take that. And if you have neither of those things, get on social media, find our accounts, like us, follow us, share, comment. Love us, don't just like us, love us. Because the more you do on social media, the more it boosts our profile and other people see us. So you can help in ways great and small, and I appreciate your time.
I'm sorry, Penny. Earlier, I'd forgotten which House district you were in, and I got flustered. So Penny's House District 48. Up next, we have Ryan Melton, which is U.S. House District 4. And Story County is one of the 36 that Ryan is trying to represent for us. And as we wait for Ryan to make his way to the front of the room. Thank you, Ryan, for your time. And thank you, everybody, again for coming.
Haircut?
Haircut.
Looking good. Can you all hear me back there? Raise of hands. I saw some people knitting out there. Put your knitting down just for a second. Just for a second. How many people know who Kevin Virgil is? Raise your hands. Oh, do I have a story for you. It's been a pretty surreal past couple weeks for the Melton campaign. Let me tell you a little bit about it. So Kevin Virgil is the guy that challenged Randy Feenstra on the Republican side in the primary. Now I'm hearing some, oh, okay. You can start knitting again. That's all I needed you for. I'm not anti-knitting, Penny, okay? Come on. Crocheting, knitting, cross-stitching, all of it. I love it. All right. So Kevin Virgil, in and of itself, the fact that he challenged a twice-elected incumbent congressman was notable, right? Regardless of how that result ended up. Kevin Virgil got in the race really late, ran a 6-month primary campaign, didn't have a whole lot of money, certainly did not have the backing of his party, had no name recognition, had no pedigree. Actually, I found kind of some kinship with him because that's how I started too, back in early 2022. On election night, primary night, Kevin Virgil, considering all those obstacles, ended up winning 40% of the vote in this congressional district on the Republican side, won 9 counties of the 36. And you might be wondering, why are you talking about the Republican primary challenger to Randy Feenstra? You're running against Feenstra, not Virgil. Well, I'm telling you, because a couple weeks ago, Kevin Virgil, the Republican, endorsed me. So the question is why? Well, a lot has been written about it. If you Google Melton, Virgil, Feenstra, you'll see plenty of stories about it. In those stories, maybe the most enjoyable part for me, which was seeing the Iowa Republican Party leadership have public meltdowns on Twitter for a week after that. That was fun. That was really good. Now, Kevin Virgil, he announced the endorsement without telling me. Kevin Virgil and I had talked every once in a while, and I'll tell you some of the overlap as far as policy in a moment that led him to that decision. But he did not tell me before he endorsed me that he was going to do so. But I posted on Facebook and Twitter. I know it's called X now. I refuse to call it that. We're going to call it Twitter, okay? I posted a recap of a Friday lunchtime event I had with a room full of Republicans in Marshalltown. They call it the Pachyderm Club. Cute name, a little clever name. But it was a very cordial conversation, and it went just like every other time I've talked to rooms full of Republicans in the campaign trail, which I try to make a habit to do. So I posted about it, talked about the commonalities, the common cause, the common ground we shared in that room. And Kevin Virgil retweeted it and endorsed me right then and there, and then wrote a longer article explaining his decision 2 days later on Sunday, a couple weeks back. So why did he endorse me? Well, the number one thing I implore all of my Democratic Party candidates, my friends, to do is to remember that the number one thing that anyone is looking for, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Independent, is an ability to trust the person they're voting for. Every Republican room that I speak to, and every Republican I speak to at a county fair or what have you, the first question is not what kind of Democrat are you? Are you progressive? Are you moderate? The first question they always ask is who owns you? In other words, where do you get your money from? Who are you beholden to? And I tell them to look me up on Open Secrets. It's a website you can go to see where your funding sources are as a candidate. And they'll see that I've rejected corporate PAC money. I've taken $0.00 of corporate PAC money, and I will continue to reject corporate PAC money. They'll see that I was arguably the first candidate to run against the carbon capture pipelines in this state long before anyone else knew what they were. I've long asked the tough questions about the roots of the cancer crisis in an attempt to push the needle towards forced accountability, because our Republican rank and file friends are rather upset that the Republican Party leadership refuses to even acknowledge there's a cancer crisis in this state. And the Republican rank and file on the ground are very angry that their party's leadership has sold them out to corporate power in a wide variety of different ways. So in those rooms, whether it be in Marshalltown or others, At this point, I've put the hard work in. I've made very clear that my top priority is letting them know that my words are my own. I'm not owned by anyone. You can take my words to the bank. Now, as far as the endorsement itself, and I'll close here, I'm at time, Kevin Virgil spoke to the fact that obviously Kevin and I are going to have a number of disagreements. But he knows that I'm a man of dignity. He knows he can trust me. He knows that I'm an independent thinker, that my words are my own. And he knows that his rank-and-file Republican friends share a lot of the same concerns that we have. The hollowing out of our congressional district, the fact that the vast majority of our 36 counties have seen massive population decline under Republican Party leadership. And that has led to a dramatic plummeting in quality of life indicators across the board. Last in the country in mental health care bed availability rate as a state. Last in the country in OBGYN availability rate. Just about last in the country in senior care facility health inspectors as rural health care is collapsing in this state. A plummeting in public education. A difficulty in getting more than one applicant for a rural public education opening in this state these days, per the folks I speak to at the ISCA. So Kevin Virgil called out just about everything that I call out, which is that when you have a single party that's run this state for so long and they care so much more about getting the pat on their head from their big money donors and they care about holding themselves accountable to you, the pendulum has swung too far. And now I can tell you it's swinging back. So let's capitalize on it. Let's talk to our friends and family on the right. Let's be brave. Let's have those conversations in a respectful, loving, civil way. And let's talk issues, because the issues are on our side. Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Next on the agenda is Charlie Wishman, the Iowa president of the AFL-CIO. Thank you, Charlie, for coming.
Thank you, Mike. First of all, thank you all for inviting me here to speak to you. And thank you to all of the candidates who are running for office. It can be pretty tough out there putting your name on the ballot for anything. And those of you who are incumbents or don't have opponents, thank you as well. It's a really, really tough thing to do. So thank you all. And as usual, Story County and surrounding areas puts together a good slate of candidates. So I think a couple of you maybe have heard what I've been talking about lately to Democratic audiences, but if you've heard it or heard this story before, apologize, but you're going to hear it again. But I do think that it's something that we need to remind each other of. But how many here remember, how did you feel the day after the election in 2016? Pretty lousy, yeah. Some thumbs down is that's one way to put it. Yeah, I was pretty devastated, and I know that a lot of us woke up the next day, and I immediately knew, okay, work comp, project labor agreements. I could think of all the labor things. I knew that that public sector collective bargaining was probably going to go. Knew all these things were going to happen. Knew that women's reproductive rights were going to be in a bad position really, really soon. That turned out to be the case. Could go on and on down the line about all of the things. And look, we started off with them. If you look back, I mean, so I remember the first time it was kind of this, oh, holy crap, what do we do? And I remember we had all these progressive groups that we got together, and I don't remember really a lot of that first meeting. It was a few days after the election. I do remember that I greeted everybody who showed up by saying, welcome to the resistance. And I wasn't trying to be dramatic. But that was before Star Wars came out and kind of stole that, but like, that's what we all did, right? And that's what we have been doing. It started off with the Women's March, right? And how many of you participated in the or a Women's March, right? we had, I don't know, we had collective bargaining, and we had all of these things where we had so many thousands and thousands of union members come to the Capitol and protest that. On and on, I could name so many different issues, whether it comes to the attacks and cuts against women's reproductive health care and bodily autonomy. Could go on, and we have been slowly but steadily, we have been fighting these fights for so long. And it's feeling like, I don't know, feeling kind of worn down. That's the way it was feeling earlier this summer, right? But we are, as the thing about the Democratic Party goes is, we're a coalition of coalitions. And some of our coalitions had to kind of reinvent themselves. And it takes a while to get yourself in the position where you can maybe even capitalize on an opportunity. And so sometimes the way I like to illustrate this is with talking a little bit about somebody who's probably one of the more influential and important Americans that many of you have probably never ever heard of. His name was A. Philip Randolph. You may have heard the name, but you may not even know why, right? And that's kind of the way I was. But A. Philip Randolph, he grew up, well, first of all, it's kind of the context of this. So A. Philip Randolph was born near Jacksonville in the Deep South in like 1898, something like that. And to kind of set the stage for how he grew up, Plessy versus Ferguson, that was 1896, so not long after he was even born. The United States Supreme Court, which we have found out does get things wrong from time to time, got this one wrong for sure, and definitely said, hey, states, you can discriminate against anybody you want to, which was going on, but the Supreme Court just said, hey, it's legal. And so A. Philip Randolph is a young black man growing up in the Alabama part of Florida, and he kind of had enough one night when there was a black man who was jailed for some offense, rightly or wrongly, and the white folks in town, there was word that he was going to be lynched, and so his dad, who was a minister, and his friends went and gathered weapons and went and guarded the jail that evening. But at this point, A. Philip Randolph was like, I am sick and tired of this. My family should have to put up with it. He did not want to deal with Jim Crow anymore, and so he became part of the Great Migration to the North. And so A. Philip Randolph was part of the Great Migration, and this is now, we're in the late teens. And so he makes his way to Harlem, which is at that point one of the places in the world that is, and maybe in the world, that is fast becoming the black capital of the world. And so he gets there and he doesn't know exactly what he wants to do, and so he does find out that he's kind of got a thing for writing, and so he starts to write. A union newsletter hired him to write for them. I can't remember what union it was. It was like the something messenger. And so he said, you know what, let's just take the union's name off the front of it, and it'll be the Messenger. And because he wanted to talk to all of the working class, not just a publication for this one union. So then after that, he runs for office in the early 20s, and he loses. Then he runs for office again, and then he loses again. So he's not quite sure what he wants to do for himself, but he's kind of built a name. He's been making writings. He's been running for office on a working class platform. And so a union that really had very, very little power, if not pretty much none, it was almost all a black workforce. It was the Union of Sleeping Car Porters. And so just to illustrate too, why they came to him is that he couldn't be fired because he wasn't a porter. He could speak freely and speak for them and negotiate for them, and they weren't. Because when you were doing that as a black person, it wasn't just you're not going to get your contract, you could end up killed, right? But A. Philip Randolph he took over the leadership of that union, and that was in 1925. So we're a little bit further along now, and in 1925, he starts to organize. And A. Philip Randolph, so the main source of transportation in 1925, yes, cars were invented, but it was trains. And how did the word get out there, and how did he organize? Well, heck, his union was all across America on passenger rail. And to show you really why so many labor struggles, and I could go on and on about this, they aren't really about, yes, they wanted a raise, and yes, they wanted benefits, but part of it, a big part of it, was that they wanted dignity and respect in the workplace. For example, all of the sleeping car porters were named George. Well, they weren't named George, they were called George, because the owner of the company, his name was George. I mean, how demeaning is that? That they take away your identity at work even. And so he starts to organize, and the porters go all around the country, and he tells them, hey, start getting people organized and ready. We're going to be planning something big. And he keeps planning that. But in the meantime, he helps Roosevelt get elected, right? So Roosevelt gets elected, and after that, shortly after that, also with helping people that you like get elected, things happen like the National Labor Relations Act and so on. And so legislation happened that would have made it so that they were actually able to organize. Then just about 12 years after Randolph had started organizing the porters, they actually got a contract and they got recognition. And then they joined the AFL. And so A. Philip Randolph then was able to start getting to know other labor leaders. And so this really isn't a union story, because as this goes on, you see that this is actually a story about all of our movements and how they can work together. Because as much as everybody in this room probably loves Roosevelt, he wasn't planning on desegregating the war industries. Now, to A. Philip Randolph, that was kind of a big thing, because those were the highest unionized industries. They were the highest paid industries, and black people were not able to work in them at all. So in 1941, in January, look, everybody knew that we were going to war at some point soon. Lindbergh didn't know, but everybody else pretty much knew. So he starts to try and get meetings with Roosevelt to say, I want the war industries desegregated. And so he goes, and finally he could not get a meeting with Roosevelt. And so, as usual, sometimes it takes a woman. And so Eleanor got it done, and Eleanor got the meeting, right? And so he had this whole thing planned out. Because keep in mind, since 1925, the porters have been going all across the country telling people to get ready, getting them signed up, collecting information, figuring out how to make the logistics of something like this work. Because what he said to Roosevelt was, desegregate the war industries and desegregate the military, or on July 1st of 41, I will march 100,000 people on Washington. That was the first march on Washington, except it never happened. Because Roosevelt didn't really believe it could happen, but he threw his head back and kind of laughed at it. And he turns to Walter White of the NAACP. He said, this guy really can't do this, can he? He says, yeah, yes he can. And that was not the kind of thing Roosevelt wanted to have happen at the time, in the lead up to war. And so what happened? He gave in on one of those two demands, and the economic demand. And this was, at this time, Randolph, he didn't just want a better life for the sleeping car porters that he was the president of and so on. He was trying to move this into economic freedom, or what he called the unrealized emancipation proclamation that this country never really fully had an economic freedom for people. And so the war industries were desegregated, and then World War II happens, and then you get to about 1948, or pretty close to 48, and he goes to Harry Truman. And he says to Harry Truman, we would like to, now keep in mind, we've had African Americans who have went and served our country, have been killed, had come home and faced terrible discrimination as well. But so he goes to Truman and he says, if you don't desegregate the military, I'm going to march 100,000 people on Washington. Similar story happened, and also a little bit change in the dynamic there that Truman really did, he was kind of in a four-way race at the time, and he really wanted those votes of African Americans. And so he then desegregated the military. But at this point, Randolph did not take his eyes off the prize. He kept organizing and organizing. And through the 50s, A. Philip Randolph, what does he do? He's not even a particularly religious man, but he's organizing religious marches, and he's working with youth groups and doing youth marches and organizing with other groups. Again, it's not just the labor movement, it's not just the civil rights movement, it's the youth movement, it's the religious movement, it's all of our movements coming together, right, throughout the 1950s. And so then what happens? Finally, after Kennedy is elected, there was kind of a view in the African American community that Kennedy really wasn't actually serious about doing anything for real about civil rights. And he was. But again, it took A. Philip Randolph coming, and now he had a bigger posse that included people like Walter Reuther from the UAW, and also people like Martin Luther King. And I could go on and on and on, and John Lewis, and so many other influential people. And they went to Kennedy and they said, look, if we don't get the Voting Rights Act, if we don't get the Civil Rights Act, if we don't get, well, the time has come. We'll march 300,000 people. But Kennedy actually realized that this is actually something that is good for him. He wants to have that public support. He wants that to be shown. And sure enough, 300,000 people on the anniversary of the day the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, 300,000 people marched down Washington. And all of you know about I Have a Dream and may be able to quote parts of that speech. But there was 40 years of organizing that went into that to 1963. And then in 1964, what do you get? You get the Civil Rights Act. And in 1965, you get the Voting Rights Act, right? So it takes a really, really long time. But when things were ready, when all of these movements converged, again, we were ready to seize the opportunity. And even these partnerships that were built, I know I can speak on the labor part of it, right? All of the buses that were provided for the March on Washington, they came from the UAW. The UAW was the one who actually bussed people into the March on Washington. And actually, Martin Luther King, after this, had turned his attention to labor rights and being part of the anti-war movement as well. And Martin Luther King was actually gunned down at a strike. It was AFSCME 1733 in Memphis. A lot of people remember the I Am a Man and remember all that, but don't remember that it was garbage collectors who were actually trying to just make a better life for themselves is when he was shot. And so I think that we're kind of at a similar point right now. And it feels so much different than maybe it did earlier in the summer, but it feels like all of the different movements that make up the Democratic Party, and to the extent that these Venn diagrams overlap and all of these things that we actually, we're like Theseus, we've like rebuilt the boat and it looks the same, but it's newer and it's better. And it feels like now we actually have some wind behind our sails, right? It feels like, and everybody loves Joe Biden, right? But this feels different. This really feels different. And so we got 59 days?
59 days.
59 days. We're there, we've got the boat rebuilt, we've got the wind at our back. We just need some more pushing us, right? So whatever it is that takes you to do that first door knock, or whatever it takes for you to do that first phone call, because I'll admit, I have anxiety at times, like really bad. It's just, you know, we all got mental stuff, right? Something or other. That's kind of mine. And so I'll get anxiety really bad before things. And sometimes I need to think of like, hey, what is it that gets me to do that first door knock or that first call? And it was mentioned earlier by Charlie. Actually, I think, you know, the thing that I think of the most for two reasons. First of all, I think of Gus Walz. Because, first of all, who are these people who were attacking this kid? Like, that's as low as it possibly can get. Take away the fact that he may have some issues, and I don't know what they are, and I don't really particularly care. I mean, I care in the sense that I want him to have a good life, but it's none of my business, right? The kid, his only crime was saying, I love my dad, I'm proud of my dad, and crying when he's the vice presidential nominee, and you had people being so cruel about that. But also, like, how cool is it that that kid was so fired up about that he's probably got about the coolest dad in the world. And he's going to be vice president, right? Like, so that's for me, right? Maybe it's something that makes you mad. That maybe it's your rights being taken away in some form or another. Maybe it's the pipeline. Maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe it's something that made you happy. Maybe Senator Quirnbach puts out a really great press release where he just slams Governor Reynolds and the new lieutenant governor or something. And I'm like, yeah, Herman, I'm going to go pick up a packet and do some stuff, right? Whatever it takes you just to do a little bit. Because a little bit will all add up to a lot. I don't know. I feel like we are in a really, really good spot right now. I know that we're not supposed to. Everyone remembers 2016. Oh, my gosh. Don't. Just get out there and fight. We got 59 days. We'll see what happens on the other end, but I feel pretty good about where we are.
Yeah.
So with that, I just want to say thank you very, very much. The seeds that you have planted, just like the seeds that were planted by civil rights and labor leaders and people from all different kinds of movements that led to amazing things happening. All the things that you've been doing since 2017 and before, this is the time. This is the time where we see where this all comes to fruition. So thank you all very much. You have a great evening.
Thank you to all of our speakers tonight. I really appreciate your time. I'd like to ask something from you real quick. If you all were to grab your program and turn it over and look at the very back of it, you'll see that there's some early voting information on there. And I don't want to tell you what to do, but we can't win if you don't vote. And I don't want to tell you what to do, but if you don't tell your friends to go vote, they might not. If you don't tell your family to go vote, they might get busy and not vote. What it comes down to it right now is making sure every single person that you can drag to a polling station, they vote. And maybe some of them won't always vote the way you want to. But that's part of our country. We have a voice. That voice is important. If we don't use it, it is wasted. So I ask all of you to figure out what it's going to take to get you to vote, what it's going to take you to get to that polling station, what it's going to take to get one more person, one more, to the polls. Rita Hart only needed 6 more. Only 6. There's more than 6 people in this room. I all know you know more than one person. So that's my ask for you all tonight, is think about, how am I going to get to the polls? Who am I going to get to go with me? And how big are we going to win by? That's what I'm asking. Thank you. Sorry, Maddie's got one more thing I must have missed.
I just wanted to let everyone know, we've talked about volunteering, and here's how you volunteer. Our office at 415 Main Street is doing canvassing shifts every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Just come in, get a packet, you can take it and knock the doors later that day or the next day. You don't need to take it and knock right during that time. So just come either then or on Sundays. We are also going to be there from noon to 2. So Saturday, every Saturday, 10 to 2, Sunday, noon to 2. Come get a packet, knock some doors. It's a lot easier than you think. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Yeah.